Hey, I'm Melissa, and these are some tips on shopping for diverse books and some book recommendations for your child. I want to upgrade your library, whether it's your children's library or your students. Here we go. So you should know that in 2018, 50% of all main characters in children's books were white, 27% of them were represented by an animal or some other sort of creature, and then every other book, which makes up 23% of the books published that year, were represented by another minority group, so whether it be Black, Latinx, a Native, Indigenous group. All of those kind of main characters took up 23% of the books published that year. So you can see there's a gap between the students and the children that are reading these books and the representation in the pages. More books were published in 2018 with main characters that were animals or creatures than any non-white character. While those numbers are changing for the better, that's awesome, your library does not have to look like that. Here are some tips and some recommendations on how to upgrade your library to be a more diverse, a more inclusive selection for your children or your students. Tip number 1 is to pick books where Black and brown characters are having fun, they're going on adventures, they're learning, they're creating, they're leading. It's important to hear the tough stories, and they are crucial and necessary, but it's also necessary to just have some fun with your books. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2 is to pick historically accurate books and culturally accurate books. We want our children to know how these people really lived or live, and not just have the shallow version of, or the surface level version of, the real rich story. So you want to make sure the books are historically accurate and culturally accurate, and you don't need to know it all. You can just do some research, figure it out, hear some people of that culture or that experienced whatever this topic may be, historical event may be, tell the story from their perspective and see, does this book honor that culture and this history. Tip number 3 is to listen to your child. Listen to what are the things that they're questioning, what kind of ideas and theories are they forming, and let that curiosity guide what book you pick next. What's your next read? Look at what your child is seeing in the world, noticing in the world, and let that guide you. Alright, so you found a book or two. Tip number 4 is ask yourself who's telling the story, who benefits from this story, and who's missing from the story. Who's telling the story, who benefits from the story, who's missing from the story. This will help you have rich conversations with your child about the values that they see here, and maybe even what can supplement the story that you're currently reading. Not every single book has to tackle every single thing. That would be impossible. At least I think it would be. And just because someone's missing in a book doesn't mark it as non-inclusive. It depends. The great thing is that we can be critical thinkers, and we can have these conversations with our children as well about maybe who's not represented. Maybe that's the next book you read. Maybe this book just wasn't really hitting the mark, and that's okay too. Don't shy away from having these conversations, even if they're tough. Don't shy away from questioning the material in front of you. It's okay to only take some parts away from a book and leave the other parts behind. That's okay. The final tip number 5, is to read these stories frequently, every day. Don't just wait for a holiday to read about Chinese New Year. Don't just wait for February to read about Black stories, to read about the enslaved people's story. Don't just wait until November to read about Indigenous people and their stories. It's important to read these stories every day because this is the world we live in every day. These people exist every day, and it's important to acknowledge this frequently, not just when a holiday comes up. So I encourage you, read these books throughout the year. Don't just wait for Black History Month. Don't just wait for MLK Day. Don't just wait for Chinese New Year. Let's learn about Chinese culture in, I don't know, October. Who cares? It's okay. It's important to read these stories every day that are reflective of the world we live in, because that's what the world looks like even when it's not that specific holiday or that specific month. Alright, now let's get to some awesome books that I got from the library. The first book is Amy Wu and The Perfect Bow. This book is so precious. The illustrations are gorgeous. It's a actually rather new book. I think it came out around the summer. But in this book, Amy Wu wants to create the perfect bow, just like her mother, her father, and her grandma, but she just can't do it. She can't hack it. And we get to see Amy try, struggle, try again, and she's very innovative. I love how she figures it out. I think your child will too. And in the back of the book is included a recipe on how to make your own bow if you so choose. So that's Amy Wu and The Perfect Bow. She also has a very cute kitty. The second book, I'm a little biased, is Islandborn by Junot Diaz, because I'm a little biased because I'm Dominican. So in Islandborn, we follow a Dominican girl called Lola, and in school she has a project where she needs to talk about the country of origin that she comes from, but she doesn't remember the island. She left it when she was very, very young. So through observing her neighborhood and asking some adults that she knows, she's able to piece together the story of Dominican Republic and why her family left. It's so beautiful. The images are gorgeous. Sidebar, there's a little illustration of a crossing guard, and I'm like, yeah, I know that lady. I know exactly where she stands here in Washington Heights. But one of the things I really love about this book is the way that Junot Diaz decided to talk about Trujillo, which was a dictator that ruled over Dominican Republic for a very long time, and he was oppressive, and he, you know what a dictator is. And I loved the way that he honored it, and still made it something digestible for a young reader. He's shown as a monster that terrorized over Dominican Republic. The next book, third book, is Julian is a Mermaid. And this book, short, sweet, beautiful. I love that the illustrations are on a darker paper. They're not on a white paper, which is so different and makes the story very distinct. So in Julian is a Mermaid, Julian knows there's something different about him. And he's unsure if he'll be accepted by his grandmother. Spoiler alert, he is. It's very beautiful. I think you can have really awesome discussions about what do fashion choices mean and what does gender mean, which can be such a sticky topic. I love that this book focuses less on labels and more on acceptance and expression. Love that. Next is Another by Christian Robinson. This is one of those books with no words, which I love to bring into a classroom, because then the students get to make up their own. There's so much room for interpretation, which is honestly like the beauty of reading. So in this world, this little girl, she finds this portal and she's sucked into this portal, and you get to choose what happens. Here's a little shot. Here's a little look. at this separate world. It's really beautiful. And I think there could be lots of fun reads and rereads and rereads with this book, and a lot of awesome projects with storytelling. Next up is The Proudest Blue, and in The Proudest Blue we follow Faiza, which is the younger sister, as she watches her older sister Asiya take on her first day wearing a hijab to school. There are some sad parts in this book, but the author handles it with a lot of grace, a lot of poetic language. I think there's a lot of beautiful conversations to be had around The Proudest Blue, and what does it look like to be loving and accepting, and as opposed to tolerant, which is very different, and what does it look like to be proud and beautiful and honoring of your culture, regardless of how others may act, and what does that look like even when you're in scary situations. Love it. My last suggestion is Jabari Jumps, and this was a new read for me. So in Jabari Jumps, Jabari may or may not jump. He goes to a public pool with his father, and there is a diving board, and he's scared. But we see Jabari tackle this fear, and with the support of his father, he eventually jumps, and the illustrations are the cutest in this book. Look at his little stretch. So yeah, this was a very fun read, and this is definitely one of those books, I think, that are you finish the last page and then it's like the start, let's read it again, and you cycle through this book a lot of times. So that's all from me. I hope this helps you upgrade your library, and if there's any other tips or any other book suggestions you would include or you'd like to share, feel free to comment that below. My Instagram and my TikTok, which I'm loving TikTok as everyone else is, I think, is included down below in the description box where you can check that out. And happy reading. Bye!